Our story begins long ago in the very capital of the universe, in a place called heaven that was filled with angelic beings who delighted to do the will of God. Under the Creator's just and loving government, all of heaven enjoyed an existence of happiness and perfect bliss. The supreme Prince of Heaven and Commander of the angels was the all-powerful and loving Son of God. Under the compassionate rule of Father, Son, and Spirit, proved to be a place of wonder, peace, and joy. To carry out the commands of God, the Trinity was surrounded by a virtual ocean of countless ministering spirits called seraphim and cherubim, or more commonly, just known as angels. These powerful and intelligent creatures found their greatest joy in doing the bidding of the Almighty. But God created one extraordinary angel to serve as leader of the entire heavenly throng. The Bible tells us that his name was Lucifer, which means light bearer. Lucifer was God's most splendid created being. He was captivatingly handsome and endowed with astonishing powers of leadership and organization. Among the angels, he was greatly admired, respected, and loved as a friend. Yet, God foresaw the misery Lucifer was about to introduce into the kingdom of light. As Lucifer began to ponder his own beauty and power, his heart gradually started to change. He allowed his focus to turn away from God, and he directed his love upon himself. Lucifer gradually began to covet the power of God, but not his character. As he thought about his own extraordinary abilities and beauty, the cancerous tentacles of pride and self-exaltation gripped his mind. This resentment and jealousy ultimately drove him to violate God's holy law and rebel against his government. God's moral law has always provided security and stability to the cosmos. The commandments describe who God is, his power, his territory, and authority. The last 6 describe what God is like, his honesty, his purity, his faithfulness. Lucifer knew if he was to ever share the power and status of God, he would need support. So he went to work. He began to deviously circulate among the other angels, planting seeds of doubt and discontent regarding God's leadership. At the same time, he would subtly highlight his own virtues. He insinuated that God was abusing his divine power, and his law was restricting the true freedom and happiness of his creatures. With his clever reasoning and unrivaled powers of influence, Lucifer managed to persuade a great number of the angels to join him in his mutiny. They did not know he would eventually stoop to torture and murder God's own Son on the cross in an attempt to seize his throne. Strangely, Lucifer thought he could conceal his true purpose from God, and in loving mercy, God warned the wayward angel of his danger. But in the end, pride and self-love would not permit Lucifer to repent. So he chose open rebellion against God rather than humble obedience. So now, the big question was, how would God respond to this crisis? How would he deal with Lucifer and the millions of angels who joined him in his rebellion? It was to allow it to run its course. This would be the only way to ensure that evil would never rise again. As Lucifer and his supporters brought the rebellion to the forefront, the Lord knew that there would be no peace if they were allowed to remain in heaven. A line must be drawn, action taken, and the rebels evicted. But Lucifer and his supporters would never go willingly or peacefully. The next step was war. The Bible doesn't reveal exactly what weapons were used or how long this cosmic conflict lasted. But this was a war the likes of which no mortal eye has ever seen. Revelation 12, verse 4 tells us that ultimately Lucifer and 1/3 of God's angels were physically expelled from heaven. But what next? Lucifer now had millions of angels on his side, but he needed a staging ground from which to continue his revolt. Soon, all too soon, the universe would begin to understand how painful and costly the wages of sin could be. For the war was not over. It had only just begun. Lucifer, the light bearer, had now become Satan, the adversary.